It's titled Galmier, and it takes you to 17 minutes after 6 on OFM, the sound of your life. What is the B20? And what is its relationship with South Africa's G20 Presidency this year? Telling you more is Marisa Jacobs, the MD of Xpatweb. She attended the launch of the B20 last week in Cape Town and was kind enough to give us some insight into some of the deliberations and discussions. Marisa, thank you so much for coming back to the Business Hour. How are you?
Thank you. Yes, it's great to be with you, and we're very excited to be hosting the G20 this year on the Africa continent.
Yes, absolutely. And so for those who are not familiar, could you explain what the B20 is and how it connects the private sector with, as you mentioned, the G20 and the agenda of the G20?
The B20, or the Business 20, is the official engagement group of the G20 that represents the private sector, as you said. So it brings together business leaders from across the world to provide policy recommendations that aligns with the broader G20 agenda. So essentially, the B20 acts as a bridge between government and business to ensure that the voices of business are heard in terms of these global economic discussions. So each year, the presidency will host a country, and then the B20 will focus on the key economic priorities such as trade, investment, sustainability, labor, education, all those various aspects. And they do this through different task forces. So I guess in short, it's about making sure that the private sector plays an active role in solving global challenges alongside governments.
I mean, such an exciting time for South Africa with us having the G20 presidency amidst really precarious geopolitical times too. Anyway, as a representative on immigration and with your role in the B20, how do you think the forum can leverage global networks to facilitate the movement of talent and skills between nations for economic growth?
I think it's a great question, and that's obviously where my interest lies. And I think the B20 provides a crucial platform to address global talent mobility challenges. And so by leveraging its extensive network of business leaders, policymakers, and experts that are involved in this B20, it's essential that, in today's interconnected world, economic growth is increasingly driven by access to the right skills and talents. And I think the B20 is in a unique position to facilitate policies that can enable smoother cross-border movement of skilled professionals. And I really think that one way that the forum can do this is by advocating for more streamlined immigration frameworks that can balance national interests with the need for global skills mobility, promoting policies that reduce those bureaucratic barriers and enhance the recognition of, for example, qualifications across borders. We can create a more agile visa systems that are tailored to those high-demand industries that need to attract talent. So I think it's a very exciting time to be involved.
Marisa, South Africa, has had this sort of age-long problem of, developing great policies, but really struggling to implement them. How do you see the task forces turning some of these discussions into actionable, practical recommendations beyond just a policy discussion or policy development?
It was such a topical item at the B20 Summit Launch last week. It was quite remarkable that over the full 1.5 days, every single speaker who spoke at the event, the discussion was driven towards this action, that it has to be actionable, and we don't want to just be talking and making recommendations. We really want to be able to sit in 1, 2, 3 years from now and look back at the B20 South Africa Summit and say these were the policy recommendations that were made, and these have been actioned, and this is what we can see at the end. So it does really seem to be top of mind for every single person that spoke, that's leading a task force, for the chair and the co-chair, the Sherpa of the B20. So I'm feeling really positive after attending the summit that we're going to see some real results from this B20 year.
My final question for you, Marisa, what specific outcomes are you most excited about in terms of the B20 process? I think beyond the high-level, highbrow discussions, I think a lot of people, when they're listening to you, they get that sense. It's, a lot of talk happening at a very high level. How do you hope these will positively impact South Africa and the African continent in the context of the G20 summit?
There's three main topics and themes around the B20 specifically this year. So the first one is inclusive growth, the second is shared prosperity, and the third is global cooperation. So there's definitely these big themes, and each of the task forces have sort of taken those big themes and is building on that. So for me specifically, my excitement sits with that stronger labour mobility frameworks, and one of the biggest hurdles for businesses in Africa is access to global skills and workforce mobility. And I'm really hoping that the B20's advocacy for more streamlined, business-friendly immigration policies will unlock some new opportunities for the Africa continent and for business to integrate into those global value chains. And also specifically, Africa has this young, large talent pool and population, which a lot of the European continent is really struggling with an aging population. So if we can find a way to really leverage the Africa workforce, I think it can be a really instrumental year for us.
Jy luister na die OFM Sake Uur met Olebogeng.
Thank you so much to Marisa Jacobs. She's the MD of Xpatweb. She was telling us more about the Global Business Forum for G20. It's known as the B20. You can read up more information, including details on the task forces, how you can still join the B20 by visiting b20southafrica.org. That's b20southafrica.org.